Welcome, everyone. I'm Janet Therese, and this is Living the Paradox, One Within Oneness. I'm an intuitive coach and energy guide here to support your spiritual journey, increasing awareness and compassion for yourself and others. Join me as we explore the ways you can live the paradox of individual consciousness, living within oneness. If you're experiencing a spiritual or psychic opening, are an empath trying to manage feeling everything, or wanting to learn how to integrate your spiritual journey into your daily life, stay tuned. You will gain tools and exciting insights on how to connect with and trust your inner guidance. Your personal journey helps lift humanity as we are all cells within the same body of consciousness. Living the paradox starts now.
Hey, everybody, welcome. What a great show we've got planned for you today. This topic is so seriously important. I almost wish we had put this in a 3-day webinar, to be honest with you. Look, we're going to talk about, Janet, look, boundaries with an open heart. There has never been a more important topic, I think, than now. And I know that you have a reason for picking this today, but we're talking about not just boundaries here, there, but like at all levels, aren't we?
Yes, we're talking about boundaries at all levels. And it's funny because when we talk about boundaries, it can kind of tend to be a little bit harsh, depending on the context, right? So
Yeah.
I'm going to set a boundary, or I'm going to draw a line in the sand, but really, when you think about a boundary, it's a healthy boundary is basically, I'm here, you're there, this is me, this is mine, this is not me, this is not mine. There's no negative emotion involved, like anger or fear, which of course closes the heart chakra. So we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
It sounds really simple, but people are waking up to that reality that we are also all one. So how do you then set a boundary? What does that mean as we are developing in consciousness to this other reality that we're also living, right?
I got to talk to you about this, and let's just roll with this if we could, because this is really confusing. I remember trying to come up with another word. I'm really good at other words. Like I created the word unstuckable, right? So I'm really good with words, but this is one of these words I've messed around with. And at one point, what did I call it? A respecta circle.
Right. I like that. A respecter circle. Well, It's kind of like when empaths talk about needing protection, right? And I think I've said this before. It's like when it's raining outside, you don't say, I need to put on my protection, right? You put on a raincoat and you go on your way, right? And that, if you could think of a boundary in that same way, it's just, here I am, it's just here, this is where I end, and this is where I begin in this dimension. So it can feel really confusing, especially for people who are empathic or clairsentient. Yeah. They're the feelers, right? And if they haven't figured out how to discern what's theirs and what's not, who they are and who they are not, then they can experience all sorts of issues, especially boundary issues. Yeah. And that's where they're merging energetically with others.
Yeah, I want to just drive this point home and have you talk about it. A lot of times when we talk about boundaries, we talk about an assertive move. And let me just tell you what I mean by that. What's an assertive move? Remember the book, I don't know what it was called, This Is My Space, That's Your Space. Remember that? It's like some kind of television thing, right? But but there's another kind of boundary. There is the boundary that's, like you said, the protective boundary. But then there are different boundaries that aren't necessarily like that.
No, your skin's a boundary. Your skin is a boundary. So, yeah, I mean, how do you set a boundary when you don't have a sense of where you end and another begins in this dimension? Right?
I'm going to drop a note on you right now. And here's the note. This is my epiphany around this. I had a bit of an experience, which we don't have time to talk about today. Fear gets underneath our skin, and it prevents us from either truth telling, truth slaying, or truth being around this. And what I mean by that, and I hope, you're going to talk about it, so let's get at it. Okay. As a therapist, your role is somewhat, what's the word I want to use? Respectful and safe. So you're not going to be like my best friend who walks into the room and says, "What the heck did you do with your hair today?" So we're not going to have you do that.
No, that wouldn't be nice.
But you've got to admit, sometimes my therapist said to me, "Well, Dr. When you would love it," she said, "I just want to grab you and shake you right now."
That's funny. In a loving way, of course.
Well, in a very loving way. But
Yes,
let's talk about this because it is paradoxical. And that is really the thrust of your show.
It is. And, let me tell you about my experience and how I started my boundaryless journey. When I was in the healing school, like years and years ago, I went through this process of re-experiencing my birth in this incarnation. My mom was given an epidural, and she had told me that it didn't kick in until after I was born. No. What happened for me was I felt the boundaries of the birth canal, right? And then the epidural kicks in. I went completely numb, felt total expansion with no boundary. It was like the feeling of blowing up. It was actually terrifying. So remember, birth is a contraction. You're contracting into physical form, and you need to feel that boundary of coming into the world so you can establish a strong sense of self. So that experience set me up for a particular energetic pattern that I needed to heal. And I can see now how that experience and my road to healing that helped me get to where I am now. It's why I'm so intuitive. It helps me guide others on their path, which I'm so grateful for. And by the way, there's a giveaway on my website, free 20 minutes for the first 10 people who book an appointment. And so if you need some help with that, let me know. I do want to talk. Oh, go ahead, Pat.
Go ahead. I want you to really talk about this because a lot of times this gets put in the overlay of a parent and a child. Yes. And I know there's much more than that, but I'm imagining you're going to talk a bit about that.
Yes, let's talk about children. Children need to feel the boundaries so they can develop their own energetic container, which isn't fully developed until they're 7-ish. So they're basically cooking in the soup of their parents. And hopefully they have a strong container that feels safe and nurturing to hold their child as their field, as the child's energetic field and chakras fully develop. Okay. I learned to establish strong boundaries as an adult because my mother, while she was such a loving mom, she was wonderful. She didn't have strong boundaries for herself. So I had to figure that out later. But it's super important to have boundaries with your children. And, with the gentle parenting that's happening right now, which I get, you can still have boundaries and provide them in a gentle way. You can. And we're going to talk about how to do that later.
Well, let's talk about why that's important. For a minute, because, part of this is, and part of what the overlay is, especially if you find yourself as a therapist, right? Mm-hmm. We are in a very unique position. And I know you go through this all the time. Mm-hmm. I know that you work with clients and you see this all the time. Mm-hmm. And what we see is something that's so important that we don't talk about. Some people wonder, Janet, why don't you just do it? I don't know if people have ever said that to you, right? But why don't you just do it? But aren't we disregarding the emotional side of this, the fear side of this? Yes. The what do we want to call post-traumatic triggers from doing something like that, right? There's so many, this is so multidimensional.
It is. And you have to start with strengthening your own container if it's not there already. So start first by remembering that energy follows your focus. Okay. So you strengthen what you place your attention on. And the more you can bring your awareness to your energy body and field, the stronger it becomes. So let's do this now. And there's no need to go into a deep meditation to do this. You can do this anywhere at any time, right? With mindful awareness, right? But if you need to close your eyes, if anyone would like to close their eyes now while we do this, go for it. So first, what you want to do is you want to ground down. And that's the best way to say, I am here in the present moment, like putting your stake in the ground or finding your coordinates in time and space, right? So with each exhale, just settle down just a little bit more and allow your physical body to entrain to the frequency of the planet. Okay, it's very important to remember that that's why we ground. The body is nature. And this is the frequency that we need to feel nourished, healthy, fully functional in our bodies. So once you've strengthened that vertical connection and you can breathe in and expand a bit, just to make sure you're not contracted. But it's so important to ground first because before you feel expanded, because you can see the visual, this vertical beam of light anchored into the earth and this bubble of your energy body that surrounds and permeates the physical body. Then breathe in and expand. So remember, it's important to do that because fear makes you contract and it closes your heart. And that's why you can't have good boundaries when you're contracted. You can't. You're like a sea anemone, right? And that's what you were referring to. It's not, if you're afraid, you need to pay attention to your energy field. If you're afraid to set the boundary, look within, figure out what's going on, breathe and expand, feel that edge of your field like a soap bubble, like just feel that inside edge of your field. This is me, grounded in the here and the now, and practice it every day. There's, again, no need to be in meditation, just mindful awareness of your energy field. Make sure it's expanded, which you could do on the exhale. And while you expand, gently nudge out anything that isn't yours, okay? And then you'll have more clarity.
I want to ask you about this because aren't you actually strengthening something within someone?
Oh,
Doesn't this actually strengthen? So I want to make that point really clear to people because you know better than anybody else, Janet. You know that this is one step at a time to the journey. How do we want to call it? The boundary journey.
The boundary journey, yeah.
It's one step at a time. And you may have to do this several times.
Exactly.
Right?
Like strengthening a muscle, you know, but remember what you focus on strengthens. So when you strengthen that energy field, you're not going to, you communicate with your field anyway, just like cells communicate with each other. So you're going to be communicating boundaries, not necessarily verbally. They're going to get the message. When your field is expanded, oftentimes that's all it takes. That's all it takes. You've got a real strong sense of self and nobody's making you collapse on yourself.
Yeah. We're going to take a really short break, but when we come back, I mean, what we're talking about, you have the opportunity, I think thousands of times a day, we're faced with this. Everything from your boss saying to you, do you mind not taking your lunch till 3:00 today? And by the way, you came in at 6:00 this morning.
Yeah.
You know, things like that from your child literally throwing the peanut butter jelly sandwich across the room in a moment of that again.
Yeah.
But every day you have an opportunity to do exactly what Janet says. Now, before we go to break, you mentioned a 20-minute session. Can you tell folks about that and please give them your website again?
Yes, my website is janettherese.com and Therese is spelled with a TH. And it's right at the top. I'm giving away 10 20-minute sessions. So jump on and book it now before they fill up. And I'd love to help you out with this because boundaries are a problem for a lot of people. And
boundaries are a problem for almost everyone.
Right.
We just don't know it.
People. But with texting and with emails and there's lots of boundary issues that don't involve just telling someone, no, I'm not going to do that for you, or you can't do that anymore. You know.
Yeah. And don't use an emoji if you don't know what it means. Let's take a really short break. We'll be right back. And we're going to talk about the emotional side of this because the emotional side of boundaries, it's the same coin. It really is, whether you are the receiver or the giver. It is the same coin.
It is.
Emotions run on all ends of the spectrum. Let's take a really short break, everybody. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. This is probably one of the most important conversations or things that you can learn in the 21st century. And, I know this is a short show, but sometimes you will say something and then you cannot get it back. And sometimes people don't realize that this is about establishing open heart, having that space for love and yet set boundaries. One more time, if you could give people your website, because you're not just giving away a 20-minute session. You work with people on this and they should know that.
Yes, I do. It's janettherese.com, JANET dot. Oh, no dot, JANETTHERESE.com.
Okay, before the break, I talked about emotions on both sides of the coin or both sides of the aisle, whatever you want to say. It's as long as there are two people involved or you and a dog, there are still boundaries that have to be. But there are emotions around this. Can you talk about this? Because this is where it gets very tricky.
Yeah, I'd love to share this story about my client. She was experiencing all this anxiety, and we figured out in a session that it was anticipatory fear, or fear that something will happen. Not sure what, but better be on high alert, right? Not how many of us have experienced that. But she was raised in a country where there was a lot of bombing. And so she learned how to be on high alert at a very young age. We cleared that, but there was still something there nagging at her. And I looked at it intuitively and noticed her mother's energy. And it turned out that it was her mother's fear. And she's really close with her mom, so she didn't even notice it, right? As soon as she recognized that it wasn't hers, it cleared, it was gone. So think of, again, those energetic boundaries as that semi-permeable cell membrane. The intelligence only lets in what's beneficial. So this client, who's also an empath, has good boundaries, but it's mom. I'm used to merging with mom, right? So that's a tough one. The trick is when you're going to work with boundaries, you can't do it if you're in that anxious or negative emotional place.
Yeah.
So you
that doesn't really turn out very well. And, what are some examples of that? Some examples of that, or you let it's like pent up energy, pent up anger. You let that, get to the point where we see it in sports a lot. But we don't really recognize it in ourselves. We do see it in sports. We're always commenting on stuff like that. But in ourselves, we go through those same emotions, but we don't really see it in ourselves. So what is it that can give people that feeling, that heart opening, heart area feeling, so that we can at least hit the pause button before we open our mouths?
Exactly. Don't hit send, right? Just don't hit send. If you're in an emotional response, do not hit send. But really, the secret is to open your heart first before you've got to clean up your field. You've got to clean up what's going on. Are you triggered? Are you feeling fear and anxiety? Go to the heart, do the grounding, do the expansion. And if you know you're going to be speaking with someone, just prepare beforehand, like with the process that we just did, and then do some heart breathing. So you want to breathe in and out of the heart chakra, and then bring to mind someone or something you love, even your pet. I love my pet. Feel that love for them, and then radiate love outward. And when you do that, you might get this sense of spaciousness within the heart area, the heart chakra area. And it's really, really lovely. I read something recently in one of my favorite books. It said, all love seeks an outlet through me. And that helps me remember three things. One, Christ consciousness, God, the guru, whatever name you want to give it, is already inside of us, in the heart, by the way. And this consciousness is love. And three, love is what we are because we are individuated expressions of that oneness. That's love. So when we remember that, how can it not express outwardly, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. I come from a research environment where I remember having a big debate on a concept that never took off.
Right.
It's called the boundaryless career. And we were having a debate, an academic debate, one of those healthy things. And I said, it's never going to take off, and they just looked at me, but that is what people want. They want the boundaryless career. I said, they're never going to want anything with the word boundaryless in it. And so in order for you to get the people the idea of what you're trying to say about careers, you really need to come up with another word. And lo and behold, even my own research on it didn't show the kind of results because it's hard to go and say boundary, and it's equally hard to say boundaryless.
Right. It
right?
is. It is.
What does that even mean?
It bounces off in a way. It's just not a friendly word sometimes.
What does that mean, boundaryless? I don't even know what that means. I think you got to be living on your own planet, like maybe Jupiter or something.
When you think about your energy body and your field as a container, the container that you have for your body, you have a container for your family, you have a container for your work. These are all energetic containers that we create. And whatever you place in that container gets expressed outwardly. It radiates outwardly. So when you communicate a boundary with love and compassion for the other person, and by the way, you don't have to like their personality, right? If you can hold a heart space, you can hold a heart space for people where you're just not that hot about their personality, that's okay. It's so much easier to set a boundary. But the cool thing is, the magical part is that it's received well, oftentimes because they start in training to the heart frequency that you're radiating out.
Yeah. So important. I mean, I wanted to say to everyone, if you think that there are places that this doesn't work for you, I'm telling you, every minute of every day, every time you pull up to a red light or behind a red light, or you've got somebody in front of you that is going too slow for what you think, energetically, practice this.
Yeah. Send them love. Maybe they're, going slow because they need to. Maybe they're in a lot of fear, and, you can send them love and help them out. That's what being a healer is in the world.
Yeah.
It's what you radiate. It's not what you do.
Let's mention again the work you do and how people can work with you, because this is like a little tip of the iceberg of a fuller body of work that you do with individuals. Yeah. But the essence of what you're talking about today permeates your approach. And I think that's important for people to know.
Yeah, I'm an intuitive coach. I work with people on all levels, but always working the energetic side of it. So first and foremost, and I do work with a lot of empaths, but first and foremost, especially for empaths, is you have to have a strong and healthy container. So you can be effective in the world, right? Here I am. Here I'm not. It's so much more important. And now that we live in a world where there's so much technology and we are psychically going off in other places because we're not necessarily physically in the same room, we have to gather ourselves back up, right? Just gather yourself back. Call back all those little big toes you've got on everybody and just bring them all back home.
Yeah.
And you're so much more powerful that way.
To quote, yes, again, the last Dune movie, everything ever written about Dune that goes back 40 or 50 years, there's one statement that many of you will know, and that is the statement of the chant, fear is the little mind killer. And that little mind killer stops us from understanding to ask for something that may protect us emotionally, spiritually, physically, and intellectually. Exactly. And that's really it, right?
Exactly. And we can clear in session work. I can clear those phobias that are sabotaging your ability to communicate with other people. We can clear that. You don't have to live with them forever. Those are things that can be cleared because it's just an unconscious pattern, and we can clear unconscious patterns.
Yeah. And I hope at a future show, we talk about the dynamic nature of peer pressure. What am I talking about? Here, I'll leave you with this. You're lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
And everybody in your group wants you to try this new yogurt, just a little spoon of it.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
Eat the yogurt, Janet. Come on, eat. And you know, right?
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
You're going to eat the yogurt and you are not going to feel good.
Right. Exactly. So no, thank you. It's my self-care choice. Love, love, love.
Thank you.
I love
and
you,
Janet. Thank you for demonstrating how easily that works. Thank you so much for today. Anything you want to leave us with here at the end?
Oh, just try it. Just give it a go. And if you have any trouble with it, just reach out. I'd love to talk to you. Thank you, Dr. Pat.
Thank you all for tuning us in, turning us on. We'll see you next time. And please, please, we're not kidding about peer pressure. Please be aware of it. And maybe in some other shows, we'll tell you what to do next. We'll see you next time.
I'm Janet Therese, and you've been listening to Living the Paradox, One Within Oneness on Transformation Talk Radio. We've been exploring ways you can live the paradox of individual consciousness, living within oneness. Tune in every fourth Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time for more tools and exciting insights on how to connect with and trust your inner guidance and how your personal journey helps lift humanity. For more information, visit janettherese.com. That's Janet Therese, THERESE.com.